So thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We are going to be starting the talk in just a few moments. Our speaker today is Judy Rodgers, and Judy is a writer and a communications consultant. She's worked extensively with thought leaders in business and education and media, and we were talking about the media and the business side just a little earlier. Judy now lives at our retreat center in the Catskills Mountains of New York, and the retreat center is called Peace Village, and it is very, very beautiful. Today, Judy's going to be speaking and sharing her insights on how to go from crazy to cool, how to deal with the daily anxieties. And right now, I think we're facing far more than we ever have before as individuals, as well as how to develop habits of calmness. And so Judy's sharing on Calm-Onomics. If you would like to send your questions through to us on the question and answer link, I will be putting those questions to Judy after her talk. Thank you. Judy, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Artie. So good evening to you in London. I wish I could see you, but I guess I can't see you. So good evening to you.
It's not possible. Sorry, it's a webcast.
All right. Okay. So I'm just going to trust that you're there and that you will write or reach out if you have any questions. So Artie and I were just chatting a bit about the times that we're in, the world that we're in. As she said, I'm in New York. I'm about 2 hours north of New York City in a retreat center, but I'm really aware of what's going on in the US, not quite as aware of what's going on for you in the UK. And so, so what's the world about right now? The world is a little bit worried. The world's a little bit, some of the world's a little bit angry. And there's a lot of sorrow. You know, the combination of COVID and the isolation that's come from that, the potential economic problems that's come from that has really made it an anxious time. And so, so we're talking about being calm. This was Artie's topic, Calm-Onomics. And so what I thought we'd talk about for the next 40 minutes or so is a little bit about this. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper than usual. I'm not just going to say, hey, relax, although that's a good thing. And if you can relax, that's a good thing. But I want to be a little bit more thoughtful with you, as if we were sitting together in that nice auditorium where you usually meet in that hall. So first, why should we be calm? I mean, what's the argument for being calm? And I'm going to suggest there are 3 good reasons that we want to be calm. So one of those is that there's greater power in peace and happiness and contentment, which comes with calmness. And I'll tell you a little story. So someone that both Artie and I were very close to, and some of you may know, is Dadi Janki, who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris up until March, when she left the body at 104. And I remember being with her at a dialogue in Oxford, and I don't remember the topic anymore of the dialogue, but there were about 30 people there, and she opened up with a talk. And in her talk, she said, you know, she talked about the importance of being peaceful and loving and happy. And she got done. And one of the young men at the dialogue is a guy named Karva Pop. Karva now lives in South Africa, but at the time, I can't remember if he was in Ghana or where he was, but she got done with her talk, and Carver said to her, Dadi, all due respect, but you know, the place I live, I don't think these things are appropriate, what you're talking about. I don't think it's appropriate to be peaceful and loving and happy when we have all of this crisis going on. We have um, epidemics, we have violence, we have inequality. We have a lot of things that keep us from being peaceful and happy and loving. And she was very thoughtful, and she came over to him, and those who know her know that she loves this kind of engagement. And she walked over to him and she said to him, there is no power in anger. There is no power in fear or worry. She said, the power is in the things I'm talking about, in peace, in love, in happiness. She was kind of saying, all heat, no light. Now, I know this is a tough concept because it really feels like, especially with anger, that there's power in anger. And I think we can make an argument that anger gets us to do some things that we need to do. But what she was saying when she said that there's no power in anger is that anger is not essential. It's not fundamental to the human being. So there's power in the qualities that are intrinsic to the self, which include peace, love, happiness, compassion, kindness, you know the list. There's natural power in those. They're generative, they have life. These other qualities like anger, especially, righteous indignation, that kind of thing, aren't fundamentally powerful. So that's one reason for us to explore being calm. A second reason for us to explore being calm is that it has more impact, which is related to the first one. Now here, you know the names. It used to be that if we asked who were the greatest living leaders in the world, we got the same list, right? We got Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, Gandhi. So now those people have all moved on. I don't know who would be on our current list, but what did they have in common is their ability to remain calm and stable no matter what was going on. So the impact of these people, which is what history has been made of, is that they are able to remain calm and clear-headed and find the way forward even when things are really in an uproar. So that's another reason to be calm, is you have more impact when you're at peace. And then a third reason is that you feel better. When we go around and we're like permanently upset or permanently angry, or worried or afraid, but we don't feel as good. I've been thinking recently about how each of us has sort of our own natural song, like an inside melody. And if you think about it, if you think of the people close to you, there are some people that just always have a sad song. Whenever you engage with them, they're just a little bit sad, like their music, their inner music is a little bit sad or a little bit worried or a little bit argumentative or whatever. We all have like a default song that we go to, melody or state that we go to. We have acquired these songs. Our experiences have given us this kind of inner belief that this is the way the world is. And so we act from that place. But actually, every self, every soul's natural state, natural condition was of peace, is of peace, and love, and happiness, and kindness. So all of our songs would be similar if we weren't affected by all of these things. And that state, when you move around in a state of contentment, it's just a better place to be. You just feel better. So that's one good reason, three good reasons, right, for us to be calm. So how do we become calm? What's like the, if we were going to frame this, how would we frame this conversation about calm, about how do we get there? And I'm going to suggest that in its simplest terms, what we're talking about is shifting from an outside-in framework to an inside-out approach. So what do I mean by that? So we have developed this habit, most of us. I'm not going to say everyone, because there may be some very hardcore introverts among this group. And so I would say most people have become pretty extroverted, meaning that our natural instinct when we wake up and get out of bed is to focus on the outside. So we're looking out at the world. We're looking at social media, we're watching or listening to the news. If we're moving into the world, we're focused on what's going on around us, what's going on with the people and with the events, etc. And those things in the outside world cause us to have an inner experience. So if I pick up the news, I can get upset almost any day reading about what's going on in US politics. You know, we're 2 months from an election. So this habit of looking outside and then having an inside condition causes us to be always kind of bouncing around in response to what's happening outside. So we're fluctuating. And the more difficult things happening outside, and that list, as you know, is really long. I mean, whether you're talking about big things like climate change, or you're talking about medium things like politics, or you're talking about small things like health diagnoses, or your job, or your kids, or all of that kind of stuff. All of those things on the outside are then, because we allow them to, creating an inner state. So therefore, we're not really in control of our inner state. We kind of show up and whatever happens, happens. So I'm going to suggest that the overall strategy here is to shift that to inside out, which means that we manage an inner state that keeps us in the condition we want to be in. So I'm going to suggest, because of our topic today, that inner state is calm and contented and light and happy and loving and kind and big-hearted. I mean, you'll have your own list, but that kind of inner state allows us to show up in the world and bring our own lens to that world. So we then look at the world and we meet everything that comes our way from this inner state that we've created inside, right? So from outside in to inside out. So easy to say, right? But how to do that? So how do we make our inner state calm and peaceful and loving? How do we manage that? So that's what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to suggest 5 things that we can do. And I'm going to chat with you a little bit about each of those. And as Artie said, I'm happy to chat about questions. I think she'd like to do them at the end, so I'm good with that. I'd also be good in the middle, but I'll leave it to my host. So the first method I'm going to propose for this, creating this inner space, is to have a pure intention. You have to have the intention to have this inner state in order for it to come about. It's not just going to accidentally happen. And I'll give you an example. So my mother left the body in June. And she lived in New York City, and she wasn't such an easy person, I gotta say. Sometimes she was wonderful, and sometimes she was not wonderful. So I used to go see her and kind of brace myself for what might happen. So I would walk in the door, and sometimes we'd have a really icky visit that wasn't nice at all, where I felt worse when I left. She probably felt worse when I left. And other times we'd have a nice visit. So at a certain point, I thought to myself, wait a minute, why am I not giving this a little more thought? So I would come to see her on the train. And if any of you know New York City, we have 2 train stations in Manhattan. One of them is Penn Station. So I would come into Penn Station, and from Penn Station to her apartment on the east side, I would make a plan for how I was going to make this visit as good as it could possibly be. So I had this pure intention that I was going to create an experience for us that was beneficial. So my thought was, okay, I'll be loving, we'll be playful, we'll be a little bit light. I would sometimes stop, buy a little gift, buy some candy, buy some flowers. So by the time, it was about a 25-minute walk. So by the time I rang her doorbell, said hi to the doorman, went up the elevator, down the hall, rang her doorbell, and her husband opened the door, I was beaming. I was absolutely beaming, not because of anything she was going to provide, but because I was so full of this pure intention. And then I would come in, I'd give her a kiss, I would present whatever thing I had come up with, and we would engage. I have to tell you, this changed everything with those visits. Partly because I was no longer asking kind of if it worked, I was asking, did I successfully deliver on my intention? Was I loving? Was I kind? Was I generous? Was I playful with her? Whatever happened at her end, I just accepted. But my being true to my own intention to create that inner thing inside and then kind of radiate that out to her made all the difference. So that's number 1, having this pure intention. Number 2, check your heart and clean your heart. Now, this is not quite as easy as the first one. This again was an inspiration from Dottie Janke. Dottie used to talk a lot about the importance of having a clean heart. I actually watched her work with someone from England who was visiting in India on this subject of the heart. And she was talking with him about all the things that happen in the heart, you know, because what she explained to him was that everything starts with the heart. So in the example with my mother, where did that inclination to have that pure intention come? From the heart. When we show up in a relationship with anyone, we're coming from whatever's going on in our heart. It's kind of ground zero, you might say. And what she explained to this man was that the heart takes in sorrow, anger, fear, worry, and kind of harbors them. These things can get stuck in the heart. And actually, they can get stuck there for a long time. And so our ability to clean the heart, our ability first to notice, first you have to notice that there is something in your heart. Now, some things can come in and you recognize right away. You know, you feel your heart shrink a little. Someone says something unkind and you bristle a little bit. You know you took some sorrow in your heart. But some things live in there a really long time, a really long time. So the second point is you have to check your heart. And if what you want in your heart is calm and peace, then you have to actively cultivate a heart that is at peace. You have to actively create a way for your heart to be at peace. Now, so I'm going to move on to number 3, but it's very connected to number 2. So if number 1 is pure intention and number 2 is check your heart and clean your heart, number 3 is forgiveness. And again, this has to do with the heart. So what goes on in our hearts a lot of times is that we will have something from the past that we haven't been able to get over. And so we may hold that as either blame, kind of a long-term anger, or guilt, anger at the self or disappointment with the self or whatever. So it's really important to be able to forgive ourselves and to be able to forgive others, because this is the way to clean the heart, right? Of course, it's good if someone knows that you've forgiven them or whatever, but actually what I'm talking about is liberating our own hearts so we can be in a state of peace. So I'll tell you a story. I was giving a talk in the Caribbean a number of years ago, and a woman came up to me at the break and she said, my mother-in-law isn't very nice to me. She doesn't treat me nearly as nice as she treats her own daughter. She doesn't invite me to a lot of family things. When she does invite me, she asks me to stay in the kitchen a lot of times. Sometimes she doesn't even get me a gift for major events like holidays. She doesn't take me places. She'll take her daughter, but she won't take me. She says really unkind things about me. And she went on and on like this. And I said, geez, I'm so sorry. Does your mother-in-law live near you? And she said, oh, my mother-in-law has been dead for 36 years. What? You have been carrying the ghost of your mother-in-law around in your heart for 36 years? Now, this is what happens to the heart. We have this experience in the past, and we keep revisiting it, right? So we have the initial experience, and then each time we have another repeat of it, or we remember it, we sort of build out the memories and the feelings about this experience until we have almost a little entity, a little thought form living in the heart, as if it were a little ghost. And so we can't let that go on. We can't let our mother-in-law live in our heart for 36 years. That's just a big mistake. We have to forgive those people. We have to forgive them. Now, what does forgiveness sound like? So what this woman would need to do, she would need to, now obviously her mother-in-law is long gone, but that doesn't matter when you're clearing the heart. So you're going to say, she's going to say, pull her mother-in-law in front of her, right, in her mind's eye, and she's going to say, many of the things that you did when we were together, I took a lot of sorrow from those. And maybe you thought you had to do those things. But for my own peace of mind and for my own clear heart, I forgive you completely for what you did. And I release you completely from anything further. Good wishes to you. And you let it go. You really let it go. And anytime the habit comes back in, you send it away because you have forgiven her completely, right? All right, I'll give you another example, a little bit different, because the other thing that happens to us, so we blame, but the other thing that we do is we hold guilt about things we did, right? That makes our heart heavy, and then we can't be peaceful, because every time we go inside, we've got this old guilt. So another retreat, this time in Peace Village, and this man, they always come up at the break, right? They never bring it up in the room because they're very tender things, very intimate things. So he came up to me and he said, when I was a teenager, my father died, and I inherited the responsibility of finding a husband for my sister. And he said, but the one I found was an alcoholic, and my sister has lived all these years with this alcoholic, and it's all my fault. So I said to him, well, did you intend to find an alcoholic for your sister? And he said, well, no. And I said, okay, so at the time when you were a teenager or late teens, did you do the best you could? He said, yeah. I said, so it's time to forgive yourself, quit blaming yourself. So here's a way you can do an inner apology, very similar to the inner forgiveness, right? So you pull you don't have to go tell your sister. You can, but you don't have to. So you pull this one in front of you and you say, you know, many years ago, I did this thing and I did the best I could, the best I knew to do at the time, but it caused you sorrow and caused you harm. And I want to apologize to you for what happened. It was not my intention. And I'm apologizing to you completely for what happened and asking your forgiveness. And then for my own peace of mind and my own clear heart, I'm going to release this and let it go. Right? So both of these are an aspect of forgiveness, forgiving another, forgiving the self. And they're kind of big. I mean, if you were expecting little tips, this is a bit bigger than a tip, but actually they're crucial because if you're going to have calm inside, if you're going to have real peace, you have to be able to get these things out of your heart. You have to be able to clear the heart. Now, sometimes people say, yeah, but what if it wasn't the past? What if they're still living with me? Well, you still have to do it. And if we have time, we can talk about that later. So, number 4, learn to tolerate. Now, when you think of tolerating, you probably think about enduring, right? I'm going to tolerate a bad winter day. I'm going to tolerate someone's bad mood. But this is a power. The power to tolerate is actually an inner capacity, an inner power. And I think the best way to understand it is if you think about it in terms of a mother and a child. So the child can be behaving very badly, right? Wake up in the middle of the night, make a lot of noise, have temper tantrums, do all kinds of naughty things. But the mother tolerates that with contentment on her face. That's the key. That's how you know you're tolerating, right? Your face is contented. And someone who's able to do this, who's able to be loving and contented in the midst of these things, actually can transform the other one. It actually kind of evaporates bitterness. So this ability to tolerate what's going on, and it comes from your love, your natural innate love. You know, when we think about love, I think a lot of times we unconsciously feel like we can love things that are lovable, like we can love puppies or we can love kittens. That's why all those cat videos online. We can love babies, but we find it very hard to love difficult people. But who needs our love the most? The babies, the cats, the dogs. They do not need our love the most because they get so much naturally. I mean, you love them, but who really needs your love is those who are pretty unlovable, right? Because they're sad or because they're angry or because they're disappointed. You know, when we walk around disappointed, we need to feel people's love and acceptance. And so for you to be able to be in this space of inner calm that I'm talking about, this inside out state, you need to be able to have that love and be tolerant. So when someone acts out, instead of going into, why did they do that? I can't believe they did that. They always do that. She always acts like that. He always does that. Instead of that, holding in a place of tolerance for them and saying, okay, obviously this one is at the end of their rope. Let me just provide that extra that I can. Right? So that's tolerance. And the final thing under how do we make our insides calm is something that you may already know about. The Brahma Kumaris call it traffic control, but it's simply the idea of pausing for about a minute and quieting the thoughts in your mind. So let's actually do that right now. I can't see you, I'm just trusting. So in that minute, you're going to sit straight. You don't need to close your eyes because you need to be able to do this at work or on the sidewalk or wherever. So you center yourself, the center of the forehead. You might do a little scan of the outside around you and notice what the forces are around you. You might send them just a little quiet, little message of good wishes and quiet. Just a little bit of a circle around you, and then you come inside. And you locate yourself in the center of the forehead, which is where the soul sits. And what is the thought? Just, I am peace. I am peace. My eyes are at peace. I see only peace. My ears are at peace. I hear only peace. I have inner stillness. My heart is at peace. My lungs and the breath in my lungs are at peace. My stomach, my hands, right? And just center yourself in peace. And then when the minute's over, you come out and you re-engage. We actually have an app, which you may already have. You can go to the App Store and download B-Zone, B-E-E-Z-O-N-E. And there is a traffic control app on there that I use all the time. So 5 things that we can do to create inside calm. And I'll repeat them. Pure intention. Check your heart and keep your heart clean. Forgive others. Forgive yourself. Cultivate the power of tolerance. And introduce traffic control into your life. Now, this should be helping you move to the inside out strategy. So how do we know if we're succeeding? What's the inside out test? How do we pass that test? Because anytime you're trying to make a change, you have to have some kind of way to test yourself, right? So I'm going to suggest 3 pieces of your test. Number 1, are you responding or are you reacting? So a reaction is knee-jerk, right? Something says something and I kick right back. Some remark, or I turn around, or I make some smart remark. When I respond, I insert into the space between us, this space, and I ask myself, what does the situation need? So reacting, instantaneous, responding, this space inside. Can you hear that siren? There's a police siren going off near me, which is pretty unusual in the mountains. So I'll tell you a story about responding versus reacting. So about, let's see, 17 years ago, is that right? No, about 16 years ago, my son and his wife gave birth to twins. Obviously, his wife gave birth to the twins. Little girl, little boy, so cute. Oh my gosh, so cute. Now, 1 year before that, I had moved away and was living in a city in the central US and working at a business school at a university. So I'd gone out for lunch and I was coming back from lunch and my cell phone rang. So I reached into my pocket, pulled it out, it was my son, And I answered the phone, and his voice said, "Mom, I want you to know everything's okay." Well, obviously, nobody starts a conversation like that if everything is really okay. So I said, "What's up, Zachary?" And he said, "Well," he said, "last night, Jean got up to feed the babies. And when she was carrying Ruby down the stairs, that's the baby girl, she slipped on the stair and she fell and she cracked her skull. Ruby cracked her skull." And of course, your heart skips a beat, right? Now, this is where your meditation practice matters. If you've been meditating every day, then instead of reacting and going, "Oh my God, Zachary, that's horrible. Oh no, what'll happen?" Right? All of the things that we tend to do. Instead of that, if you've been meditating, your meditation practice kicks in and you get calm. And you think to yourself, what does he need? And what does his poor wife need, right? Do they need me to freak out? Do they need me to tell him how awful it's going to be? No. So I said to him, "Zachary, I am so glad you called me. I am so glad to know. And everything's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. But right now, your family needs you. And so I want you to hang up and focus on your wife and your kids. Go home, take care of everything. I will send lots of love and peace to you, and I'll check in with you later tonight." And that's exactly what happened. I hung up, sent him tons of love and peace and reassurance, etc. Now I had to then run a meeting. I was on my way to a meeting that I ran every week. And of course, even though I was giving what the situation needed, it was affecting me. So when I went into the meeting and I sat down with my colleagues, I said, "Okay, would you mind if we started with a moment of silence?" And they kind of went, "Okay." And so I took a moment and just quieted myself down. And then I ran the meeting. So when you will get tests, you don't know when phone calls like that are going to come. You don't know when situations are going to come up, and those are tests. So you, after it happens, you say, "How did I do? Did I react or did I respond? Did I bring to it what the situation needed?" So that's the first test. The second test is what we call give no sorrow, take no sorrow. So when we are kind of worked up, when we're kind of jangled, when our heart isn't at peace, when our inside is all fluctuating, we are more likely to give sorrow to others. We're more likely to say things that we regret, or to lash out, or to, um, somehow push sorrow onto another. Um, Now, and we're also more likely to take sorrow if we're not thinking clearly. Now, I'm going to guess that most of you probably don't give a lot of sorrow. I'm guessing that because on a Friday evening, I'm not sure you'd be here if you weren't pretty alert already, if you weren't pretty awake. So I'm going to guess that actually you're pretty careful about giving sorrow, but you may not be as able to not take sorrow. It may be something that happens to you. It may be that sorrow comes into your heart, because people who have a practice like this and who are on a spiritual path of some sort tend to be wide open, right? And they tend to let hurtful things come in. So you need to be alert. If you're protecting your inner space, which is what we're talking about now, how are you going to be inside out? You're going to keep your inner space protected and light and sweet and loving and peaceful. Well, if you're protecting it, you're not going to let just anything go in. You're not going to allow yourself to see images that are going to haunt you. You're not going to allow yourself to be in settings that are going to upset you if you don't have to. If I were to walk up to you with a rotten piece of fruit and say, "Here, would you like this? Would you take it?" No, no, you would say to me, "No, thanks." You might not have noticed, but it's rotten, right? You don't take in bad things. So this give no sorrow, take no sorrow, the degree to which you are neither taking sorrow nor giving sorrow is an indicator to you that you're making progress, right? That's number two. And number three is your ability to give good wishes. There's a nice Hindi word for this, bhavana. You know, I think the world may actually go around based on good wishes. It's a private belief of mine that a lot of what happens in the world can get kind of hard, right? It can feel kind of like a tough place to be. And so my ability to look at someone and really, really have good wishes for them. I, the inner self, looks at them, the inner self, whatever's going on for them, however difficult a moment they're in, and I'm feeling, may things go well for you. Good wishes. May you be able to manage. May you be able to thrive. May you find love. May you find peace. May you find happiness. Even if you don't say it with words, that your eyes say this to them, and the way you are with them, the regard with which you treat them. When you notice that that's how you're being, that's the third test, that you're actually making big progress on this inside out shift. So the test papers, you know, the tests for you to know if you're making progress on becoming calm inside, as like we're talking about, this inside out approach is, are you responding versus reacting? Are you giving and taking no sorrow? And are you able to give good wishes? Now, final thing, and then we'll see what questions you have. So you can know the things that I'm sharing with you, and I'm sure many of these things are not new to you. You can know these things in your mind and understand what you're supposed to do, but being able to do them requires some power. You have to be able to have capacity to actually pull this off, to not just react, to not give back to someone the same insult they gave to you, to not yell at the person who pulls out in front of you in traffic, or someone who pushes past you, or all of the daily insults that we have. So how do you get that power? You get it through your meditation practice. Now, if I could see you, I would ask you, how many of you have a meditation practice? And I'm going to guess many of you would raise your hand. Yes, I have a meditation practice. And then I would ask you as a follow-up question, how many of you have a daily meditation practice? And that would be fewer of you, I suspect. But I'm going to argue that it is a huge difference between meditating when you get around to it and meditating every day. Because you don't know when you're going to get a phone call like the one I got from my son. You don't know when you're going to get a diagnosis that is really difficult, or someone you love is going to get that diagnosis. You don't know when a crazy global virus is going to suddenly break out in the world. We don't know these things. So if we wait till we're upset to start meditating, we're not going to have the capacity. So we need to meditate every day. If I were to say to you, I'm going to run a marathon, you'd say to me, good luck. And what if I said to you that, I'm not really going to practice. I'm going to get the outfit, those great outfits, and I'm going to get the nice shoes. And then I'm going to go down to the starting line on the first day. You would say to me, really good luck, because you're really going to need it, right? You can't do that. You have to practice every single day. Now, if you already have a practice and you know what to do, if you don't have a practice, you start pretty small. Maybe you start with 10 minutes and then you work your way up. Most people meditators like to meditate in the morning before the world gets going. So that's a good place to start. A lot of people I know like to meditate morning and night. So in the morning, they think about the day ahead. They set an intention for the day ahead, that I'm going to be this way. I'm going to meet the world this way. And then at the evening, they reflect on the day and they're kind of saying, how did I do? Usually, if you're starting a practice, you want to go at the same time and to the same place, because then your mind gets used to it. And like any practice, it begins to support you. And I like to make it a little special. I don't do the exact same thing every day. So some days I might have flowers, some days I bring something inspirational to read. So I just can't tell you enough that, the things I've shared with you, I believe deep in my heart are absolutely true and make a world of difference. And you won't be able to do any of it if you don't have a committed practice. So I was going to lead you in another little short meditation, but I think I've talked over a little bit. So let me step back and ask Arti to let me know if there's any questions.
Okay, we've just got one that's come in so far. And the question is, you were talking about taking no sorrow. Does that mean not reading the news so that we're avoiding horrific stories that we sometimes read and affect us emotionally?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I personally choose not to look at certain things. Like there was a really difficult story about the death of someone in America named George Floyd. I did not look at the 8-minute video of George Floyd's death, but I read the news and I knew what was going on. And I don't know how we can possibly insulate ourselves at this time. I don't know how we can keep all the difficult things at bay. So I would just say that I think we have to protect ourselves. So be aware of what's going on, but manage what you allow into your heart, and don't delve into the things that are truly upsetting for you. You can know them, you can know what's going on, but you don't need to allow those scenes into your heart. You don't need to reinforce the things that are going on. You have to be a little bit picky, I think, if you're actually going to manage this.
Thank you. The next question that's coming is, how do you respond to someone who's being critical of you and how you do things, but they think that they're trying to help you, but you end up feeling pretty awful?
Yeah, we all have those people, don't we? We all have those people who are sure they're going to help us by correcting us and telling us how we could be more like them, right? Well, I would say that first it has to do with what I mentioned first in my list of 5, which is you have to figure out your intention. You have to be a little bit prepared for them. Now, if this is someone who's in your life a lot, which it sounds like it might be, and someone who you're very familiar with, then you know the program. You're not going to be surprised by what they say. So I think you have to start with, what is my intention regarding this person? And like I did with my mother. My mother was a pretty critical person, and she could find all kinds of things that she had opinions on. So you have to start with your intention. So if your intention is, look, my intention is to be at peace with this one. My intention is to keep things cordial with this one, especially if it's someone who you can't remove from your life, right? I mean, sometimes it's a boss, it's a coworker, sometimes it's a sister-in-law or someone who lives in the house with us, somebody we have to deal with. So when that's the case, you really have to start with your intention. What is my intention? If my intention is to be right, if my intention is to make them change their habit, then it could be a long walk, because most people don't change because we ask them to or because we tell them to. If we say, every time you criticize me, I really feel bad, I wish you wouldn't do that, might work. You could try it, but I've never seen people change because of that. They may stop for a week, but then that need that they have to be correcting kind of kicks back in. So I think it works better if at our end we say, all right, what am I going to do here? I'm going to keep my face filled with contentment when they talk. I'm going to have good wishes for them. I'm going to rehearse certain things in my mind when they start. I'm going to say certain things, bring certain scenes in front of me. I'm going to keep myself in this state, just like I did with my mother. And the more you do that, let's see, I mean, we can't get back together and check notes, but I would imagine that if you have a real clear plan like that, you have a clear intention, that actually you will find that it changes the other person. Because to some degree, our reaction kind of, I don't know, stirs something up in them that makes them even more want to tell us the right way to do things. So I would say have a clear intention, work your clear intention, including in your clear intention, what is your inner state? And then what are you sending through your eyes, right? My inner state is peace, and I'm sending good wishes through my eyes. And you can try all kinds of things to say, gosh, I can tell you really care about me. Something like that.
Wow. Okay. Lovely. Wow. How to forgive oneself for the things we didn't say and the things we did to loved ones who've passed away. The guilt is heavy.
Yep, I know. Well, um, for one thing, I would say that actually forgiveness transcends the grave, right? The souls of those who are left, I believe that they actually can experience something like a really honest apology or really honest love. But the real point isn't that. The real point is the self, right? The real point is what goes on in our hearts. That can feel so heavy if we have carried something in our heart a long time, as the people had in the stories that I told you. It actually, it's almost like we've gotten used to being filled with that self-criticism or that guilt. You know how when you have a couch in front of the television, and if somebody sits on it every single night, what happens to the couch? It gets a little dent in it, right? There's a little dent where the person sits every single night. That happens in the heart. There's a place where that guilt has been sitting for so long that we're used to having it there. So this business of cleaning the heart, and if we had more time together, I sometimes will take a whole weekend and work with people on this. So the first thing, you have to really have the intention. Again, it all starts with intention to get rid of this. I've been carrying this guilt for a long time. Either the thing I didn't say I love you, or the thing I did say, and gosh, I wish I'd said this. Okay, you have to start with a pure intention. My intention is to clear my heart. My intention is to send this message to that soul, wherever that soul may be. Right? Clear intention, pure intention. And you might write it down. Then, as I said, in the apology or in the forgiveness, you say it just like that. You know, I know that I didn't say the things to you I wished I'd said. And I know I may have said things or done things that I really regret. And I, from the bottom of my heart, I apologize for that. And I ask for your forgiveness. And what I wish I had said to you is how much I love you. And now I'm sending that message now, wherever you are, how much I value you, how special a soul you are. But then you have to walk that ghost, because that's what these are. These thought forms are like ghosts living in our heart. You have to walk that ghost through the door of your heart and out, and let it go like it's on a helium balloon or on a boat on the river. Send it away. Now, that dent I was talking about, that place it's been sitting in the heart, you have to fill your heart with love. And this is something you can do through meditation. If you're skilled in connecting with the divine, with the source energy, you can fill yourself with that energy. If you're not skilled there, then fill yourself with your own love. But you keep the heart filled with love. When this tries to come back, because it's a habit, it's just a thought form, but it's a habit, you can't let it back in. You'll have to send it away. And you know, because we made these things, we made these inner thought forms, we can unmake them. So you can send that out of your heart, fill your heart with love. Good luck with that.
Thank you. It's really practical. How do you walk away from someone who wants all your attention?
That's like a child, right? Someone wants all your attention. Well, what I do, I don't know if this will work for you. What I do is I put a little boundary around it. So I'll say to someone, look, I have 10 minutes. So let's you and I sit for this 10 minutes. Or I have a half an hour. Or I don't have any time right now, but today at 4 o'clock, I have a half hour. So let's sit today at 4 o'clock. And then at that time, you give them your undivided attention. And then at the exact end of that time, you say, this has been so great. I'm glad we had this time together. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. That's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you put intention in action? Often we have good intentions, but maybe because of our emotions, they don't come into our actions.
Well, I think this is where you get into your practice. You know, I can't say enough that at the heart of all this, if any of this is going to work for you, all of it works, right? I can vouch for every single thing I've told you, that I've personally done it. It personally works, I promise. But for it to work, you have to have some rigor in your practice. Because if you just say, okay, I'm gonna be different towards this person, and that's it, nothing will change. But if you put in place, let's say you put in place a morning and evening practice. Let's say your morning practice is 20 minutes and your evening practice is 10 minutes, right? I'm making that up. You do whatever works for you. In the morning, you would have your point of checking, your intention, right? So in the morning, you're saying, all right, my intention today is to really be this way with this person, or to really show up in this way. That's my intention. Now, at the end of the day, you have to have the same question, but now it's a checking question. How did I do? Now, the thing is, you got to be really honest. If you did poorly, you say, I didn't do very well today. The minute I saw them, I reverted to my old bad habit. Or if you make a little bit of progress, you say, you know, I mean, it wasn't a miracle, but it was a little bit better. I was a little bit better. And then you put the thing again in your morning meditation. And you know, you can also treat intention as a focus of your meditation. So you're sitting, right? You're centered in the self, right? I, the soul, I am at peace. My intention is to be completely patient with this one and to see them with the specialties that I know they have. So I may get annoyed by this, but I see that they do have this lovely quality. That's my intention, to focus on that beautiful part of them, or whatever your intention is. And you hold that thought. I mean, you pull them in front of you and you hold that thought for a minute, 2 minutes. Then you finish your meditation, you go out into your day. Now at the end of the day, you come back. How did I do? It's amazing how we can forget something that we had intended in the morning. So it takes a while. But if your intention is pure, it will absolutely happen. And you'll be amazed. You'll look back later and you can't believe it ever bothered you.
It's hopeful. Thank you. There's a few more questions, so I'm going to run them very quickly by you.
Okay.
This person has 2 questions. The first is, you mentioned protecting the heart. Can you elaborate? Are you talking about the subconscious, the mind, or something else? And then the second question they've put forward is, do you use prayers or mantras when sending good wishes to someone?
Okay, so let's take them in reverse order. You can use prayers. You can use mantras. Um, the way that I think about it is that each thought has a vibration to it. So a thought of peace has a vibration of peace. A thought of love has a vibration of love. A thought of fear has a vibration of fear, a more constricted vibration, right? So when we're working, a prayer is just thoughts, right? It's a certain way of packaging thoughts. An affirmation is just thoughts. It's another way of packaging thoughts. So you should do it in whatever way works for you, whatever is coherent with your own belief system and your own practice. But the essence of it is the quality of the thought that you're holding. And I know we don't have much time, but we understand there to be kind of a spectrum of thoughts, going from negative thoughts to wasteful thoughts to ordinary thoughts to positive thoughts to elevated thoughts. So you want to hold the most elevated thought you can when you're doing that. And as far as protecting the heart is a matter of holding that high quality of thought and feeling in the heart, not letting in harmful things, negative things, not letting in negative emotions, negative feelings into the heart, keeping it as clean as you can and filled with love. You know, it has to do, you have to develop, again, this is going to be a function of your practice. The more practiced you are, the more you'll be able to go through a firestorm and come out with your heart intact.
And the final question. If you have a friend who's going through a very tough time, and as a result gives off a lot of anger and pain, sorrow, is it wise to step back until you've built some resilience? Because the interactions can leave you physically stressed.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I think it comes back to your practice and how strong you are. You have to protect yourself. So if you are not able to do that, maybe you do need to step back a little. What I try to do, I happen to have a number of people in my life right now going through a lot of sorrow. And so what I am doing is, first I'm just texting a lot, which is a little safer. Good morning. How are you? Everything okay? Anything you need? If someone says, yes, there's something I need, which one of them did yesterday, then can we talk? Sure, we can talk. I prepare for the call, right? I sit and meditate. I fill myself with love. I fill myself with peace. I fill myself with kind of, what would you say, the goodwill, you might call it. And then I dial. And I go into it mostly prepared to listen with compassion. So, you know, I think if we go in feeling we've got to make it better, then we can't make it better. But we can usually listen with compassion and express empathy. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry you're going through this. Yes, I can understand that you're upset. Of course you are. Of course you're upset. Yeah, of course you are. Well, hopefully this will get better. Hopefully you'll get stronger. Hopefully you'll be able to sort through this. Right? So you're moving from listening to having a lot of good wishes. I know that's a very simple answer for what's got to be a difficult situation.
Yeah, sometimes just keeping it simple, though, keeps your head from getting over involved and taking even more than one word otherwise.
Exactly.
And that is the end of the questions. We have to draw a line and say thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time and being with us here in London. We've never physically managed to grab hold of you, so this is a real treat, definitely for us. Judy, thank you very, very much for being
Thank you, Archie. My pleasure.
We hope to have you back soon.
I'd love that.